asked Glenn to talk today because a lot of things are changing in this country. They're starting to talk about lockdowns and trying to get us to take vaccinations, and they're going to try to mandate these things. So I wanted Glenn to go over how we need to present ourselves against them, because we're the ones that are really in charge. We're the kings and queens, and it's real important for us to understand how to address this situation, because it's coming soon. They're going to be doing this very, very soon. So Glenn, why don't you come up here and talk to us about it?
Is the police going to impose it?
Well, they're talking about going door to door. They're talking about doing that.
Well, I'll tell you, I see a lot of people that say stuff like, you're spending my tax dollars. Okay, you got to be careful what you say. Okay, if they're spending your tax dollars, you're essentially saying that I'm one of the slaves, right? Because they can only tax their property, and if they're taxing their property, then you're one of the slaves. And so you have to be careful what you say, or my children. Okay. Probably the best thing to do, in my opinion, is do what Randy Kelton says, and don't tell them anything. And I like what Carrie says, is if they came to your door, they say, well, have you been vaccinated? What's vaccinated?
Or what?
Right? And but what you have to do is don't give them anything, but also be building a case. Okay, they're thieves and pirates. That's what they are. And so everything you do, be building a case. Get witnesses, have a camera, be recording it, and be building a case. Do everything to build a case. And again, with any case, you don't want to give evidence against yourself. You want them to give evidence against themselves. Remember what they tell you. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Well, that works for them too. So get them to give evidence for themselves, against themselves. So you're here, you're trespassing, you're going past this no trespassing sign, and that kind of stuff. You see what I'm saying? And get that recorded, okay? And get witnesses. And when you make your affidavits, make them short and sweet. You know, I was there, I saw this guy come up to talk to my friend, and he walked past the no trespassing sign, and they asked him about the no trespassing sign, and he didn't care, or something like that. See what I'm saying? Make it short and sweet. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages at the most. I keep it short. If stuff gets too long, these bought and paid for clerks aren't going to read it. So you want to keep it short. And when I say bought and paid for clerks, they're bought and paid for clerks masquerading as judges, okay? Because there are no judges. They're bar member scum, okay? Don't get me calling.
Do we have to open the door?
Sorry?
Do we have to open the door?
Well, and that would be something that I would consider, okay? It depends on what you want to do, okay? Clip High actually says that these videos that these people going door to door wanting to vaccinate people is going to create a whole bunch of YouTube videos, and people basically turn it into a circus. And so you could, if you do open the door, maybe you want to educate them or something like that. But if it was me, I wouldn't even open the door. I wouldn't even answer the door. Again, if they're there, they have a warrant, they'll break the door down. Okay, there's Kerry knows about that. They broke his door down. And so if they have a real warrant, they'll break the door down. And if they don't, they'll go away. And that's all there is to it. And so, number 2, I always have the door locked, even when I'm home. Okay? If you don't have the door locked, they'll walk up to that door and they'll try it. And if it's not locked, they'll walk in and you let them in. If you're going to talk to them, okay? If you're going to talk to them, then you open the door, you step outside and close the door behind you. and maybe even lock it too, so they can't have some excuse to go in there. You see what I'm saying? You step outside, you talk to them outside. You don't stand there with the door open so they can see anything inside. You don't do any of that stuff. If you want to talk to them. Again, the only reason I'd want to talk to them is to build a case against them, or to maybe convert them, if you can, if you think you can. Some people want that challenge, you know, and so that's fine. But don't give evidence against yourself. And if you have something, if they see something in your house that looks suspicious, they can go and report it, and the next thing you know, you will have people breaking your door down. And so
So if
you
you
open the door,
constitutionally carry on your porch,
I wouldn't.
yeah,
I would leave it inside, quite frankly. If you do come out, you could maybe have it in a holster, but I wouldn't be touching it. Definitely don't be touching that thing. Okay, you don't want it to be a threat to them, other than the fact that they see it. See what I'm saying?
I do.
But your best bet is to have witnesses and have a camcorder and be recording it. And that's the worst thing for them. They don't want anybody recording that.
Yeah,
You're
pictures
asking
worth
for
1,000 words.
Pictures, absolutely, absolutely. Upload it to YouTube. Yeah,
So get a no trespassing sign.
I would-
I knew that they are doing a soliciting sign.
I would have no trespassing signs all over the place.
Okay.
And here in Texas, I would mention, have that no trespassing sign. I think it's 39 dot, there's a Texas code, criminal trespass, okay? And mention that criminal trespass. No trespassing, and you could even say that means you, law enforcement officers.
Yes.
You know, that kind of stuff. I know people that put signs up and say that. That means you, all government officials. And like at Darren's place, we put them up on the trees along the edge of the property.
Yeah, so.
I would, ideally, I would have a fence around the property, have signs on the fence. But sometimes that's not too practical, sometimes there's no fence. So you can put it on the trees. But make sure that they're all over the place so they can't miss them. And if they do come on your property and you do want to talk to them, then ask them about the no trespassing sign. Did you see that no trespassing sign? Matter of fact, you know, Sheriff Richard Mack actually made a YouTube video. It's not, well, it might be YouTube. It's a video. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube or not. But he said that you tell them to leave and immediately dial 911. And that's another good approach, okay? Is dial 911. They're trespassing. I want you to come and remove these trespassers. You see what I'm saying? And there's no discussion. If you want to talk to them, quite frankly, I doubt I'd even talk to them. You know, if they're being a pest, you know, I would record, and that's another thing, is record the incidents. Okay, date, time, take some pictures of what happened, who came. You know what I mean? If there's repeated stuff, all of that builds a case against them, right? Right? So you want to build a case against them, make some notes. And all of that is evidence. Remember Kerry said, you got to have facts and evidence. So that all builds a case against them. I wouldn't, myself, I'm not interested. I consider them all just to be, you know, criminals. And so I wouldn't even talk to them. I wouldn't even answer the door. And yes.
I just have one question because I have to take off. I'm wondering, because I just want to know, how come they're getting away with not following the Nuremberg Code? Like, I don't understand why that doesn't apply.
Oh, it
What's the
does.
Nuremberg Code?
It does. At some point,
You're right.
at some point, they'll probably, some of them will be getting their neck stretched.
Yeah.
But until enough people, see, the problem is the corruption is just so prevalent, it's so everywhere.
And the brainwashing,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's what it comes down to. We need to you know, even the grand juries are owned by the prosecutors and all of that stuff, and we just need to be persistent. I mean, what'll happen, I think what'll happen is it'll take one. You know, one will get put on trial somewhere, and then it'll be like a deluge. They'll be all over the place, that'll be happening. But so it's gotta have, so far, nobody's been put on trial or anything for any of that stuff.
Hey,
Yes.
Glenn, I got a friend that's a nurse at a VA hospital, a large one, not here. And it was just announced that these VA, all the doctors and nurses, it's mandatory, they take the jab, so she called me crying, doesn't know what to do, so all the other nurses there have taken it, and they're basically bragging that, haha, when you come back from vacation, guess what you have to get? What do you say about that? What does she do? Besides quit, she's got 31, 32 years in there.
That's long enough.
She's devastated.
That's essentially, if they're, let them fire her, okay? Refuse to take it is what I would do. And what I would do, quite frankly, is no problem. Here's a letter, I want you to accept all liability for any negative reactions. And then no problem, you can give me the jab. And I guarantee you they'll come up with a way of not doing it.
So does she write it up like a conditional acceptance? I'll
Right.
take this if you do this. I'll do this if you do this. Write it up that way?
She could write it up that way, I suppose. You know,
What about religious exemption?
well, I would certainly, and what about the Disabled American vet?
That works right now too.
What?
American
Now, Dr.
Disabilities.
Americans
Fleming,
with Disabilities
Saturday,
Act.
Dr. Fleming said, you don't need an exemption, don't use their forms.
Well, I agree, but, you know, again, this is a government employee,
Right.
and that's a little bit different, okay?
One thing that did give me like good hope to it is I found out there's a ex-professional football player who is, he's older now. His wife took the job not because she wanted to, they were both hesitant, but she took it because of her job and she was injured. And then there's no liabilities, obviously. He's put together like a website where you have like people who have been injured come to this website, and I think what they're trying to do is build like some type of a class action lawsuit because there's no, and it's a little girl that was her family, which I think is so like bizarre that she would do this in the first place. But they let their kids be part of the study, the trials, and the little girl's injured, and now this mom is like, well, I didn't know that there was no liabilities to this, and now she's injured, and now they're just ignoring me, and she was part of the trials. So
Right.
there's a bunch of people gathering, at least.
So, and that's another thing I'd be doing, is I'd be bringing up, so let me just understand, do you want me to take this, you're forcing me to take this experimental vaccine? And I'd be just bringing all of that stuff up, definitely. This unproven experimental vaccine,
Yeah. Which is not by definition even a vaccine.
well, there's some question as to whether it is or not, that's right.
They call it the doctors, they call it a
Gene
synthetic.
therapy.
Gene therapy, but synthetic pathogen.
But I would seriously, you know, quite frankly, I don't work for government, not interested in working for government. If I was, I'd probably quit, you know, I've quit jobs.
Yeah.
I've walked off just because I wasn't, you know,
That same lady, I was talking to her at one of the deals down in Bowen in California, she said that the doctors are taking the shot there at the VA, and she asked them, do you know what's in it? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
So they don't even know what's in it, they're taking it.
Well, and the people that are getting involved in this website with this ex-NFL player, there are injured doctors and nurses who had no idea that they were, and now they're suffering from injuries with no liabilities. And so
Right.
there are doctors and nurses
Right.
that have been injured now
Right.
that are gathering in this.
Well, there's some, with government employees, you know, I'm not sure, but I've heard, like I was talking to a waitress here, we were talking to a waitress here a few nights ago at a Olive Garden, and they actually paid her to take the jab. And, you know, I can't help but think that they gotta be responsible for that.
Yeah.
You would think so, because
There's
it makes
workman's compensation and stuff like that, if
Yeah.
she gets a negative reaction or something like
I
that.
mean, isn't that a contract?
if they're forcing
If
you.
they're paying money for something to happen, it's a
Right.
contract.
I mean, isn't that a
Well,
contract?
would that-
I mean, you know,
Glenn, would that be
even if it's
under-
implied?
Is there some sort of code about coercion? I think
Well,
there
I
is.
mean,
Well, yeah,
there's
well,
Nuremberg
the
code.
Nuremberg
How about the
code.
Nuremberg code?
Yeah, that code alone, there's, you cannot coerce people.
And that's why I bring up the fact that it's experimental, okay? You're telling me that I have to participate in your experimental medical program here? That's a war crime under the Geneva Convention.
Well, here's another thing, like,
Especially a veterans hospital, because veterans, I mean, that's all military, okay? So now you remind them that that's a war crime under the Geneva Convention. Yes, go ahead.
yeah. Another thing is, the pilots that are being coerced, whether they get flight hours or whatever, equivalent to flight hours, they, from what I understand, my ex was a pilot and my boyfriend works for the airline. Okay, so they lock that door, right? They lock that door. If those two pilots have blood clot or something happens, everyone's going down.
I know.
They're all gonna die.
There's actually, there's a case that I know about in Canada. In Canada, the insurance companies, and it's been there for a long time too, the insurance companies will not insure a flight flown by a pilot that's participating in an experimental medical program. And so there's a bunch of pilots that can't fly in Canada, and now it's starting to spread around the world. There's British Airways and US Airways pilots that have died from the jab. Actually, Cliff High is saying that in a year, there'll be very few flights around the world because of the fact that either A, the pilots will have taken the jab and won't be able to fly, and the ones that are still able to fly will be very few. Even military flights, there'll be a lot less of military. And I work in aviation. When I work, I do aerospace engineering consulting. And so I'm very familiar with that stuff. You know,
And when you schedule pilots, I was a crew scheduler for American for like 10 years. We had to pick, certain captains couldn't fly to certain FOs, depends on their flight time. And then the computer will kick it out, say, oh, that guy can't go with this guy because there's going to be weather or whatever, they'll ground the plane and they won't take off. You have to have so many hours. So I'm wondering if they're going to implement this jabbed people versus that for the crew schedulers to know. Like, oh, no, you've been jabbed, only one of you could be
Well,
jabbed and one not.
I can guarantee you that they want to keep it under wraps. So they'll probably, it's like you said, they'll probably put it in the system so that it'll be automatic and nobody will know why. It's just that it doesn't work.
The all-knowing system said so.
Yeah,
How
yes.
do you spell Cliff's last name? Because I was trying to look that up last week.
H-I-G-H.
It's just High, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he's got a BitChute channel.
Yeah.
He's got, there's the video that I was gonna show last time was on USA Watchdog.
Yeah.
That's a really good video.
I'm gonna watch
He's full of all sorts of little nuggets there, I'll tell you. But,
Isn't he the one that said about the C-60?
yes. Well, he's the one that I first learned about it from. There's other people that have talked about it. He's the one that I first learned about it on one of his videos back 2 or 3 years ago. He was talking about the carbon C-60, and he says that's one of the things that would mitigate the damage, that if you do get the jab, that it would mitigate the damage. And I think he's probably right. It's a super antioxidant now. You know, what happens is our aging is because of free radicals, free oxygen radicals, right? Oxygen normally comes as O2, and it can also come as O3, which is ozone. And so if you have a free oxygen atom that's not combined with anything, then it wants to combine with something. And that's what causes our aging and our telomeres to shorten. And this carbon C-60 wants to grab onto those things, wants to grab onto free radicals, and what it does is you basically just pee it out. And so there's lots of stories of people, like for example, people in their 40s that win an Olympic contest, and the day they won, they drank a bottle of C60 mixed with olive oil, you know, sort of thing. And all of a sudden, they had all of this endurance available, you know what I mean? The only problem is that it's kind of expensive. It can be expensive.
It is.
And it is not approved by any governmental authorities, and so it's experimental. You get any of those things, carbon C60 mixed with olive oil, it'll have experimental written on the side of it. It is. It's experimental. It's not approved by anybody. I don't think the American Medical Association would approve it because it probably works pretty good, and they don't want to approve anything that works.
Exactly.
And so that would be, you know, I need to start doing more of that, but right now I'm just waiting for cryptos to pop, and silver to pop, and then I'll start doing it. So, at any rate, yeah, you got to be careful what you say, and the best thing to do is don't say anything. You know, I was talking to a lady out here where they had arrested her and harassed her and then released her, and then in the police report they said she stole something and they didn't charge her with it. And so, best thing to do is don't say anything, you know, is go there, build a case against them, start filing criminal complaints. I had some criminal complaints here, and you can file like this Whitley, he's the judge, so the State Commission on Judicial Conduct is a good place to start. I just filed bar grievances against 6 members of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct that didn't have an oath of office, and so they're bar members, and they didn't have an oath of office for the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. So that means they've perjured their oath because they're impersonating a public servant, and they're supposed to know the law. Bar members are the low-hanging fruit. Randy Kelton is 100% correct on that. They're the low-hanging fruit. They're the easy ones to get at because they have an oath of office and they're a public official. You can file a bar grievance against any bar member. And it's big time. Huh?
Define bar member. You mean an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay. Just kidding?
I don't know any other bar member there is.
One of the things about the task force, the lighthouse, or whatever, they're talking about vaccinating people going door to door. I heard them say one day they're coming for the kids, primarily.
Well, again, do you have children? Okay, so what you do, again, there's the CPS, right? I guarantee you go and look up online and they have an administrator. They probably have a chief counsel, okay? That's the guy you go for. You file bar grievances against them, okay? And you bring up the felonies. That's what I bring up. I bring up all the felonies that they're involved in. And there's lots of them.
And we have these
What about
for the
these?
children. Talking about
Oh,
exemptions for children right here,
oh, okay.
for the school.
Yeah, well, I don't have any children. I got sons and daughters.
I don't know if anyone knows.
Anyways, so what you have to do is, again, I don't use their words. I have property. Here's a picture of my property. See what I'm saying? I go after them for, and I go after the bar members. That's the only way to go. You have to go after the bar members. Okay, so I guess I'm done then.
No, go ahead.
Get some questions to